couple of months ago, I wrote an essay for some study I'm doing on the cultural phenomenon of mindfulness. And I unpacked different things about that. I had a look at a little bit of the science behind it, the history of it, where it comes from, and then we explored a Western view of mindfulness as opposed to an Eastern view. What I found is that as a rule, mindfulness, when people talk about it and write about it, mindfulness is called an Eastern thing, and it's seen as primarily a Buddhist thing, which is fair enough. The word mindfulness tends to have come out of Buddhist kind of teachings. However, history shows that mindfulness is not the domain of Buddhism alone, and I find this really fascinating. Helen Langer, a psychologist in Harvard, in the 80s, started looking at mindfulness. She started through the lens of mindlessness. And why do people do things mindlessly? Why do we drive a car? Why do we drive a car and not remember leaving and driving and arriving? We just remember leaving and arriving. We don't remember the bit in the middle. Why do we do things mindlessly? And that led to thinking about, well, what's the opposite of mindlessness? It must be mindfulness. What would mindfulness look like? And it turns out that this Western idea of mindfulness aligned itself very well with an Eastern view, but there are differences. And so we have two different types of mindfulness. One is what I would call a contemplative mindfulness, which is where you sit and you contemplate what's going on in your mind. You just sit and you contemplate the world within. Now, I like to do that. I have a daily, often multiple times a day, practice of contemplative mindfulness, because it is a skill that we can develop, and all skills can be practiced, all skills can be refined and enhanced, and you get better at it. And I've had a lot of people say to me, oh, I can't do mindfulness because of X, Y, Z, mostly because my mind jumps all over the place, my body doesn't sit still. That's exactly how I am with mindfulness. And so it's actually been a thing that I've taught myself to do, and the benefits I've reaped are manifold. And it's a skill. It's not a thing you can do easily, and skills can be very, very difficult to learn. So that's the contemplative skill and discipline of mindfulness. Then there is a mindful mindset, and this is what Langer came up with. And in my essay, I summarise some of her stuff, and I just want to read some of that to you now. It says, Langer has identified foundational aspects of being mindful. These are creating new categories, openness to new information, and awareness of more than one perspective. Creating new categories. Langer asserts that a person acts mindlessly when they stick doggedly to old categories, interpreting the world through strong opinions based on global categories. They use broad generalizations to describe the world. For example, a person whom someone intensely dislikes is likely to be described in broad brushstrokes as they always do and they never say X, Y, Z. So acting mindfully then is when a person actively and continually creates new categories. We see someone through new eyes, in other words. We see a circumstance through different eyes. And thriving comes about via a mindful mindset, by creating new distinctions, new categories in the world. Instead of seeing my world as this, perhaps there's another reason for it. This means that we have to be open to new information, which is another aspect of this mindful mindset. Being open to new information. Being mindful involves being open to new information about the world, and more specifically about yourself. Mindfulness breeds willingness to learn new things about yourself, to accept new information and change your self-opinion and your behavior accordingly. Being mindful is being aware of the signals that something has changed or needs to change, and adjusting your understanding of the world accordingly. Mindfulness is really, really important. It involves us having openness to new information. This one I talked about self-concept because the focus of the essay was on self, but having a mindful attitude can be mindful of anything, not just about myself. What about other people? Open to new information. Maybe there's a reason that person behaves the way they do or said the thing they do. And as we begin to understand, be open to new ways of understanding new information, we can begin to change. Also, being open to the fact that, you know what, maybe I got it wrong. Maybe I can learn something from this situation. And then another one is, and this relates directly to what we just said, awareness of more than one perspective. This is so key, right? A mindful mindset means that you're aware of other perspectives. All people observe events from their own subjective experience, I wrote. Where one person sees a problem, another may see an opportunity for something new or different. Being mindful is about trying on new perspectives and exploring other ways of understanding the world and our own experiences in it. From an ontological perspective, we are beings who seek meaning. We're always trying to understand the meaning or make sense of what's happening. And at the moment, in this phase of life where things are crazy, a lot of people are finding it very difficult to understand why. Why do I exist? Why are things happening? What's going on? We're trying to make sense. And in order to do that, sometimes we have to step back and observe our own observations of the world. When I observe, I don't just watch, I listen. The observer is always listening. And so as I listen, what am I listening to? Which stories inside my head am I telling? And as I listen to those, how is that forging the perspective I bring to the world? Now, if I listened or told other stories inside my head, and I listened to other words of myself and other tellings about life inside me, what might I learn? And how might I then see the same thing from a different perspective? And so a mindful mindset brings about a new perspective. It promotes a sense of curiosity in the world. It promotes, I suppose, Langer said it, I've written here, I'll just look, in later research, Langer refined her definition of mindfulness to be a flexible state of mind in which we are actively engaged in the present, noticing new things and sensitive to context. Called social cognitive mindfulness, this mindful mindset is beautiful. It creates a flexible state of mind, listen to this, in which we are actively engaged in the present, noticing new things and sensitive to context. In all my work with clients, there's this steep uphill run with most clients. And that uphill push is teaching both of us to see the world through different eyes, to be flexible and to notice new things. Because when I talk with a client, I run the risk of hearing their story and putting them in a box and saying, oh, you're just like all of these other people I've had, and you're just like all of those other people, and your story is going to end like that. And I can pigeonhole people very, very easily. So for me, as I sit with a client, it's important that I understand this moment as a moment of learning for me. And so I have to put on the clothes of curiosity. As I wear the clothes of curiosity, I can ask questions to myself and create a different story. I can say, well, what's making this person say that? Why have they responded? In what way are they changing themselves? Where is an opportunity for this person to transform themselves? In what ways has their past demonstrated that they have transformed themselves and that they can do it again in the future in other areas? I have to clothe myself with curiosity and enter into a learning relationship with them. And in the same way, the client needs to enter into that curious relationship. They have to enter in, clothe themselves with the clothing of curiosity and ask the question as they button up their shirt, what might be different about my life? What have I always said is the reason for something happening? And is that really the reason for that happening? What have I always believed can never change? And is it true that that can never change? Is there evidence in my life that that has changed in other areas? Is there evidence from other people's life that I've seen change in other areas? If I go out and I sit in country and I just enjoy it, what does that do for me? And I reflect on the birds and the trees and the rhythms. Today, I woke up to the sound of the garbage truck coming down the hill. Now, I don't know if you're anything like me, but I'm a person who forgets things. And I used to rely on karate. I'd go to karate training on a Thursday night, I'd come home, and I'd see everyone else's bins out, and so I'd wheel my bins out and put them on the bed, on the nature strip. I don't have karate training at the moment, so I haven't got that reliable indicator. So this time I woke up to the rubbish truck. Screech, screech. Fortunately, they'd done the other side of the street. So I raced down, I put on my pants, put on my robe, take the bin out. Instead of wheeling it out, I lifted it up and carried it and got it out there just in time for the truck to come up the hill and grab it. Got the other bin out as well. That was wonderful. Then, as I turned, I saw a really bright light in the sky. And I always like to look at the stars. That's one of my soul nourishing things. When I was a kid, my window faced the south. And I'd go to sleep looking at the Southern Cross or Scorpio, depending on which time of year it was. And I'd watch Scorpio cycling through the skies, dipping below, and I'd watch the Southern Cross changing its direction. And in fact, I have some freckles on my thigh that are in the shape of a mirror image of the Southern Cross. So I took that as my constellation, and Scorpio with it. It's just beautiful. But looking at the stars at night, that's how I would often fall asleep, very often. And so I get a lot of energy and life from that. So as I looked up into the sky, there was this bright light. I thought, is that a plane? It's not twinkling. Oh my gosh, I think it's Saturn. And I hadn't even realised that Saturn was out. I'd read something about it, I'd forgotten about it. So I raced inside, and instead of trying to glisten and glint and squeeze my vision up at Saturn, I went inside and I grabbed my binoculars, Dad's old binoculars. I came out and that he gave to me years ago. I came out and I was looking up at Saturn, this planet up in the sky. It was magnificent. How did I know that was Saturn, and how did I have that experience? Well, in my mind, I had all these categories. The sky, the stars, a bright light. At first I thought it was a plane. Then I didn't know what it was, and so I had to go through all these categories of what it could be. Well, it's not a plane, it doesn't fit that category, it's not this, it doesn't fit this category. Oh, it's probably a planet, but the planets are usually over there. Oh no, wait, that's Jupiter, isn't it? And I don't know what's going on. And or is it Mercury, or is it Venus? And so I had to go through all these distinctions of what it could be, and then I realized the shape of it was more than just a star. It was, you couldn't see the rings, but just the way the light was different, and I could get out those binoculars and look at it. I was able to work through the distinctions that I had, and it was only as I looked around me that I had this opportunity to enjoy looking at Saturn up there in the sky. At least I hope it was Saturn. I think it was Saturn. I could be completely wrong. It might have been Uncle Bob flying his hot air balloon with a giant spotlight in it. Who knows? Regardless, I had an experience. Why? Because I was willing to look around. And I had a wonderful experience this morning. And so, to have a flexible state of mind means that we're engaged in the present, but that we notice new things. I've noticed this new bright light in the sky, and I was able to enjoy it. And we get sensitive to context. I was able to understand the context, the location in the sky, and that enabled me to experience something wonderful. And so as you go about your life today, I wonder how you can bring about in yourself a sense of thriving, a sense of life, by being mindful. A flexible state of mind where you can create new categories, new distinctions. You can look at things with a different perspective, where you can notice and be open to new information and learning it, and help yourself to thrive in the process. Because right now, we're often telling ourselves particular stories about the world. The media is shoving a particular story to us. Our friends, our family, our echo chamber, social media streams are doing the same. I wonder what other story you can tell that will create a new perspective on the present and a new perspective on the future. Stu Mack, signing off.